Hello and welcome back to the Creating Value in School podcast with me, Liz Worthen, where we talk about ways to work more sustainably in schools. It's a challenge that's kept me engaged throughout my career in education, both in and out of school. In this episode, we're exploring how school business managers and leaders can add value and flourish in their roles. Aiding us in this quest are the Unbound SBLs, Helen Burge and Emma Gray. Emma and Helen have both been executive business leaders in trusts and now support school business professionals through coaching, training and consultancy. We talk about how your insight and analysis as a business leader might enable you to avert a financially risky decision, ways to reduce friction, getting value from your staffing budget, and how frogs, elephants and chocolate can contribute to time management. We'll be drawing on real dilemmas from business leaders to help us along the way.
Welcome back, Helen. It's lovely to catch up again. And I'm looking forward to delving into the idea of what value really means in school and how school business leaders can create it. But before we dive in, I wanted to get your feedback on a problem, a challenge shared by a listener, which links back to our previous conversation on risk, and be interesting to get your brains going, see what you think. So we have a school business leader who's raised that there's a proposed leadership decision that creates significant financial risk to the school. Everyone else around the table appears supportive, and the SBL doesn't know whether to go with the consensus or be the lone voice in disagreement. Helen, any advice to share?
So straight away, I'm thinking about the data that this SBL might have. What data have they got? What insights is it telling them? And have they shared those insights with the different members of the SLT, those different stakeholders? And also, I suppose there's a bit about understanding the viewpoint of those existing SLT members. Have they got influence? Have they got decision making? As a collective, they've got decision making and influence, but individually, have they got influence and decision making? So it might be that there's some quiet conversations, almost like a pre-meeting with maybe one or two to explain that data and to explain the insight that school business manager has, and explore that on an individual one-to-one basis, so it doesn't feel so confrontational. But that SBM has to understand how, and they will be better to able to understand the context of their school. I don't know their context, but so whether that would work or not. And I suppose then it's almost dynamically talking about an impact analysis of that decision, and they might actually want to document that decision, which might be good for them. And then it might be worthwhile then sharing that documented impact analysis. Or it might just be that they're going to talk that through in the next meeting. So I think there's a couple of tools that they could use. Obviously, there's a risk register as well. They could document the controls that they've currently got in place, and maybe some further mitigations that they need, and why they feel that the impact of this decision is going to create some imbalance, and what they feel the likelihood is. They need to talk through those different elements on the risk register. And then if everyone is still happy after they've shared all that insight, all that data and all those tools, then there is a bit that they just have to go along with it, don't they? It's a collective decision. I would then, if that happens, I would then be monitoring it quite closely. I wouldn't be saying, I told you so. I would just be monitoring it, and I would be relying on the data and the insights that I'm getting from that data.
What I would add is that their school business managers shouldn't shy away from being the lone voice of dissent. I mean, part of the job is to say they can have anything they want, but there is cost benefit, and there are things that will have to drop off because there is a finite amount of money. And Helen's right. There are impact assessment. If you do this, perfect, but it means we won't be able to do that. And I had a really good one I hadn't heard for a while last week, was making the main thing the main thing. Really, what is the priority? And it goes back to, what are the strategies for this year? How is this initiative going to move us forward? Is it innovative enough that it should go on the strategic plan, or should we wait until next year? I do think it's important, even if you're sort of being a bit black hat, and Helen and I have talked in the past about Edward de Bono's 6 hats, and it's important to have a dissenting voice, somebody who's saying this is the worst case scenario of this decision that you're making, and also sort of sharing the hats around, so it's not just the school business manager who is wearing that hat every time. Without context, it's quite difficult, but even without that, there are steps that you can go through and tools that you can use to really add value to the decision-making process.
That's right. So yes, it comes to that point of value, doesn't it? Actually, this is the value that the school business manager or school business leader can bring, isn't it? Is but sometimes that different perspective, a different way of looking at things, some additional information, some additional context or data. So tell me, what are some of the, what does value mean for you? What does it mean to create more value in your school business leadership role?
For me, it's about making more with the resources that we have, because we only do have like an amount of money, and it is what it is. There is no getting away with it. You can complain to glue in the face that you haven't got enough money, but you've still got to get on and spend it in the best way that creates the most, as you say, value and the most impact for the pupils in the school at that time.
I think also there's a bit about creating value that's going beyond today's budget. Of course, I'm going to think about sustainability in both senses, financial and also in the environment. So it's creating value about how can we reduce our energy consumption. That will create value because of reduced cost to the school, but also it create value in a sustainable sense, and that we're consuming less energy and that the positive impact that can create. So therefore it's creating value for future generations as well as the current people. So I think there's the two parts of that, really.
Yeah, definitely. And can you share examples of where maybe you've seen value lacking or value not being created? What does that look like?
I think one of the other elements of creating value is for the school business leader to be the person that removes some of the friction and barriers to their teams doing their best work, and that's a really important one as part of the OPEX conversation, in that you have systems that are not particularly simple, and if you simplify it just a little bit or make it understandable, it runs more smoothly, and therefore you get more value out of the work that you're doing. We talk often about reducing duplication. Things like that feel like they are not important and they're not a priority, but actually if you make the removal of duplication in your processes a priority and implement it, then you very quickly see the results of that, and then that encourages people to do a bit more and a bit more, and it turns into a snowball effect, I think.
I guess that's part of the OPEX thing, isn't it? That's right. Finding the things that are not working, you say, the things that are putting the grit in the system, the friction. And I'll put a link in the show notes and description to our previous conversation. And I think we've talked about operational excellence, haven't we, before? And with some lovely examples around glue sticks, I think. Yes. Helen.
I was going to say about procurement, in particular about contract management, and I suppose there's the OPEX part that Emma was talking about, and that removing duplication, and you talked about removing grit in the system and sort of blockages. And I think that if we managed our contracts more effectively, we would see more value as a result of those contracts. So rather than just seeing procurement as a process to buy something, it's a process to buy something and then manage that process afterwards, in terms of your catering, your cleaning, your caretaking contract, whatever the contract might be. Actually manage that, and then I'm sure that there will be more value that can be achieved from it, in terms of the social value, corporate social responsibility that you could get from the supplier that you've already engaged with. So sort of move, not every procurement can be a relationship type of process. There are a lot of transactional ones, but those where there is a relationship is actually make the most of that and manage that really effectively.
Enabling people working in schools to flourish in their roles so they can have a positive impact on outcomes for children and young people is what we're all about at Creating Value in Schools. To get practical tips, resources and insights delivered straight to your inbox, sign up for our newsletter, link in the description. Now back to the show.
So this brings us also to the Department for Education, the DfE Guidance, Maximising Value in Schools, which they produced, I think, earlier this year. And it's really about encouraging schools to think about value in that way. And I think one of the tenets of that, isn't it, is around collective buying. And the DfE is encouraging schools to make use of a number of collective buying agreements around energy or like the teacher vacancy service. So yeah, I wonder, do you have any experience of those? Are they working out for schools? Is it beneficial?
I think it's still early days. Lots of schools and trusts know that they have from September, if they're an academy trust, that they will be using this, the government's supply teacher framework, for want of a better word. And I think that they are quite pleased that's there. It's almost like, okay, there's some visible support from the DfE about something that they know is costing them a lot of money. Hopefully that will all be managed really well and they will realise that benefit and realise those cost savings. But I think that there's the other side of that, and that is about how we manage staff absence and how, again, we are using the data to and those insights, and we're following our policy. When we do return to work interviews after people have been sick, that, yes, that takes time, but you could also nip something in the bud to stop staff going off sick again for whatever reason. I think that there's two sides to this opportunity. One is about having a framework. The other side is to look at the policy that you've got in place. Are you following it? Do you need to do something about the line management that you've got in place? Do they understand that staff absence policy? And are you getting the value from your staff being in school and being present?
Yes, because I feel like, quite often in schools, isn't it? It's teachers, it's middle leaders who often are in those line management positions, and they don't necessarily get the training, do they, in things like around some of that day-to-day stuff, like return to work meetings. Yeah, I do remember hearing about, I think, a school where for a period the head teacher just did every single return to work meeting, and I think that had an impact on their staff absence figures. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, going back to procurement, and there are lots of different ways of buying something now, and I think school business managers have a lot more support in what they're buying. The DfE's buying for schools setup is free to approach and get some support in all sorts of areas of procurement. But I think what's important is not doing the same old, doing something different. I think I've probably talked about it before, is catering is something that is quite close to my heart, and you hear all sorts of difficulties with catering and providing meals at a cost that you can afford, that people want to eat, that can be given to them in the time that you've got available for lunch. So there's all sorts of barriers to catering not being effective, but it's so important as part of the school day. So I think I've gone completely away from what Helen was talking about with staff absence. Yeah, staff absence, one of those things that the DfE I know try to work with on their supply staff and consolidating that and making sure that schools aren't paying more than they should be. So, and I think that supply costs over the last few years has been one of the biggest risks to schools, and continues to be so until we really get staff absence and, dare I say it, shared parental leave sorted out.
And yeah, I think building on that, Emma, the whole thing about staff absence, we are relying on the line management. And actually, Liz, your comment about a head teacher taking on those return to work interviews, if that's what's needed to kickstart everything and to almost model, this is us acting out our policy, this is the process we're going to take, these are the questions that we need to be asking, this is a template that we need to follow. It can be done in 5 minutes or it can be done in 15 minutes. Expectation is when that's going to happen. All those sort of things you can test out. And if the head teacher can fit it into their very busy timetable, then I'm sure others can as well. But it's understanding the culture, it's understanding the context, and actually just planning it in. And then at the end of the week, if you look back and you think, gosh, I haven't done these return to work interviews, well, then you've got to prioritise them for the following week, because you've got to keep that standard up. And I've also heard of a school that when a member of staff rings in sick, they don't leave a message on an answer phone. They're calling the head teacher and they're telling the head teacher, I can't come in today because. And that again has increased, that has decreased the amount of staff absence, because it's harder to speak to an individual and say I'm not coming in than it is to speak to an answer phone. And I don't want to give the impression that we think everyone should come into work when they shouldn't be, because any head teacher, when they're speaking to a member of staff who they're recognising they shouldn't be in school today, would be supportive of that, I'm sure. What we're trying to do is give like another little stepping point, another little pause, reflection. Can I come in today? Should I be coming in today? Yes, of course I can come in today. That sort of thing. We're trying to make it a reflective process, I suppose.
Yeah, because absolutely. If we don't coming into work when you're really ill or you're just going to share germs, etc. We don't want that happening either, do we?
No. No.
Yeah.
But also, it's going back to the data, like we do with the pupil attendance. It's looking at staff absence. It makes me laugh that it's pupil attendance and staff absence, two different ways of looking at it. But are there patterns? When you look at the data, are there patterns in what's going on? Are there little things that could have been picked up earlier? Just like we do with pupil attendance, we need to be looking at that for staff absence. And is the policy actually enabling you to address those issues? And that, I think, is where there's real value to be added to the system, because we know that staffing costs are about 80% of the school's budget. If we're not getting value from that 80%, doesn't really matter what we're doing with the other 20%, really, because we've got to get value from that, and it's pupil outcomes that we're trying to increase and add value to.
It's a really important reminder, Helen. And actually, it makes me think about another, I think one of the key elements that I feel is coming through in that maximising value for pupils guidance is around benchmarking. So there's an enhanced benchmark tool, which is free for anyone to use, but you can do things like, you can compare your different types of staffing spend. You can break it down by kind of support staff or admin staff, teaching staff, supply costs, and see how you compare against other settings.
It's really interesting, the platform that you're talking about, financial benchmarking and insights tool. For the first time a few weeks ago, I heard a group of school business leaders saying that it wasn't adding value to them, and I'm not sure I understand why that is. So I do need to explore it a little bit further, but it just seemed to me there's so much information on there and there's so many different ways of getting it out that I did worry that maybe there needs to be some support for school business leaders to actually get the resource working for them, because I think the original complaint about it was that it was old news sort of thing. It was old information, and they've addressed that issue. It seemed to me now the issue was those schools are not comparable to me, and actually everybody says their school is unique, and every school is different. They're absolutely right, but there are elements of it that you can compare, and I think that is the closest you're going to get to 29 other comparator schools. And I still maintain that the fact is you've got 29 other SBLs on that list who would be willing to talk to you about why their support costs are so much lower than yours. And it doesn't take a massive long conversation. It doesn't take a visit up to the other end of the country nowadays. We can just talk like this and say, how are you making it so that and they might say, our policy says that everybody's got to ring in and speak to a senior leader, and it discourages them from being off sick, and therefore, our support costs went down. And how long does that take? 10 minutes of conversation. For me, that's the real value of that platform.
It should be about, generating questions, shouldn't it? And making you think about things. But I think actually this is a good moment for another listener challenge. Okay, we've got school business manager. Their diary is completely full. They are spending the most of their week solving immediate operational issues. They know they should be spending more time on strategy, the procurement, benchmarking, and the value for money reviews. But there just never seems to be enough hours in the day. So how do you prioritize?
There never will be enough hours in the day. There never will be enough hours in the day. And once you accept there will never be enough hours in the day, you have got to think, right, what is my job? And go back to your job description. What is it that your line manager, CEO, head teacher, whoever that is, what is it that they want me to do? And then having that really hard focus, say, make the main thing, enables you to prioritize, I think, about what can wait, what is working, okay, what are the big risks, what do I need to focus on right now?
Yeah, it's definitely looking at the risks, isn't it? And not the operational ones, but the strategic ones. And then from there, it's the operational risk. And also it might be about communicating with others and literally saying, I can't deal with that right now because I'm dealing with this, or delegating it to people. We're quite good, aren't we, at taking everything on board, but we need to be able to delegate it to others, or maybe even signpost them to where they can help themselves. I'm a great believer in frequently asked questions in the back of the staff handbook, so that you're not getting those interruptions, those sort of operational interruptions that could actually be answered quite easily and quickly if the member of staff asking the questions had looked somewhere else first. It's almost like you need to look in the handbook, speak to my colleague who's also in the office, who is an administrator or the receptionist. If they can't help you, then try me. We make ourselves very accessible, and I do believe that we should be accessible. But I think that there's also every now and then we need to make it that the emphasis is on them trying to help themselves first, rather than going to the person that is always going to help them.
I think some teachers have like a C3 before me, here are 3 things
Oh yeah.
do before you come and ask me. That's similar thing, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. And then also I think there's another little tool that they can use, and that's the 4Ds. So, it literally break up their work into, are they going to do it now? Are they going to defer it to maybe term 7? I'll do that in the term break. Are they going to delegate it to somebody? That does take time and effort to build that relationship with those people and to make sure that they're doing it to the right standard. And then there's also delete it. Actually, it doesn't need doing. It's a duplication. It's like Emma said about the duplication of efforts. Are we duplicating it? Can we do this better? And sometimes when I talk to CFOs and SBLs that I mentor, I'm talking about, you talk about the volume of work coming in. Have you tracked what that volume of work is? What are the themes that are coming through? Why are those themes constantly coming through? What can you do earlier on in the process to either nip it in the bud or direct it somewhere else? So I think there is, again, it's the data. Get your data. What are people asking me? Are there certain pinch points in a year? How can I use that data to provide some insights and change a bit of practice, either my own or that of my colleagues?
We often talk about the Eisenhower matrix, which is what I was going to talk about, as those 4Ds, and it's a very similar thing. School business leaders really need to get to a point, and most of them are, don't get me wrong, there's never going to be enough time and there's never going to be enough money. And it feels sort of depressing, but make the best use of what the time we've got and the money we've got. And the time we've got, there are some things that can add more value than others. Like we talk about 30 minutes a week to start with of strategic thinking time. Sit yourself down and think strategically. And that is quite difficult to get your head around, because we often have, when we are going around talking to school business leaders, they'll say, well, we talk about this and we talk about that. And you say, well, that's operational, what's strategy? And so that can sometimes be a little bit of a barrier, is understanding what your school's strategy or your organization's strategy might be. And the other thing that I always think is a really good way of getting into the coalface is actually sitting in the back of a classroom. Make some time every week to sit in the back of the classroom. You're not watching the teaching, you're not watching the learning, you're watching the space.
So you're watching the space, Emma, in order to identify issues and to solve them before they're presented to you in a crisis type of situation, or when someone's exasperated because they've had yet another lesson when the blinds haven't worked and the students can't see what's on the screen. That sort of thing is what you're sort of talking about there, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, what happens when the pupils first come into the classroom? What happens? Different schools have different processes. They've all got to stand behind the desk and then they're told to sit down, or they can just come in and dump their bags and throw themselves around. Is there a lot of chatter? Is there a way of making a process a little bit more smooth so that learning can happen very quickly? How can the room help with that? Have they got to trip over lots of chairs before they get to their chair? Do lots of furniture gets moved around? Is there not much time between the last lesson and this lesson, so the teacher's still tidying up the books and things from one lesson, so they're not able to focus on new ones coming in? How does that whole process work? Because it's operational stuff, isn't it? It's not so much the teaching and learning, it's that sort of in between stage. And then when they are all sat down, can they see the whiteboard? Can they hear what's being said? Have they got the resources they need? Do they need to keep getting up or going next door to find other books, or going down to the stationery cupboard to get more glue sticks? Do you know what I mean? Are they able to focus on the work that they're doing, or are there reasons why they shouldn't be focused because they're doing something else?
Again, it comes back to those kind of friction points, doesn't it? Or the bits of brick. Yeah, Emma, you talked about, setting aside 30 minutes. And I wonder too, if sometimes, because these things like doing strategic thinking or benchmarking, maybe they sound a bit more difficult. So we somehow feel like we've got to set aside hours for them. Oh, I need an afternoon to work on that. Whereas actually I feel, 15 minutes is a powerful amount of time. You can go and look at something on the benchmarking insights tool. You can call someone up or send an email and say, I'd love to know about this. 15 or 30 minutes is time to do something and make a difference.
It's like tackling any job that you anything you think. Cleaning's one for me. If you've been in my house, you will appreciate that. But actually, it's really hard to get started. And I think, right, I'm just going to do 15 minutes. I'm going to stop working and do 15 minutes of tidying, clearing the decks just a little bit. And then obviously you get into it and everything, you spend half an hour or 3/4 of an hour, and then, you're off to the next. So it's taking it in really small chunks. Helen's going to remind us what it is about eating frogs or something like that. No, biting elephants.
No. Yeah, please don't eat frogs or elephants. No elephants and frogs were harmed in the creation of this podcast. But if you've got something that you really don't want to do, i.e. eat a frog, then you're going to put it off. But you still got to eat a frog in that 24-hour period. You've still got to eat it. So just do it. Get on and do it. And if you've got 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first. And I think the elephant one, I'm not quite sure. Can't remember.
How do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time.
Yes.
Important to remember. I think they're really, things to remember. Like that saying, make the main thing the main thing. Focus on what's important. We go back to prioritization.
I prefer to actually give myself a task and then eat chocolate at the end of that task. So no frogs, no elephants, but I might have already eaten some chocolate buttons already this morning because I did a bit of work and I was like, yay, well done, Helen. You've done a bit of work that you didn't really want to do. You've done it. And so I've celebrated by giving myself chocolate.
Another excellent strategy. Okay.
Not healthy.
So if we say I was a new school business manager or going into a new setting, what would you suggest I do first? Where should I focus first to create the greatest value?
For me, it goes back to the people in the organisation already will have seen what those where that grit is. So the very first thing is go in and talk to everybody. And when I mean everybody, you often find that the person who spends 2 hours a day cleaning the classrooms has got perhaps more insight than somebody who spends 24 hours a day leading that organisation, if you're hearing me. So it's really important to speak to them all. And if you've got things that both employees agree on, then that is absolutely becomes a priority, because that clearly is something that is affecting the whole organisation, something that is creating friction.
And I think I would gather that, you've basically talked about gathering data, haven't you there? You're talking to people, you're gathering data, you're seeing what's going on, and you're making some decisions. And I would literally, gather the data about what's going on with procurement and the contracts that you've got, when are they coming out of date, all those bits. I would gather that information, I would document it, I would read it, and I would try and work out what my priorities are. But also I would look at the school development plan, and I would try to understand where I'm going to be able to add value to it. What do I need to do to add value to that school development plan, how it currently is? And then those are the conversations that you're going to be having with your senior leadership team, is about the school development plan and your part in that. And it takes ages to gather that data. It takes time. If someone can't find the contract that we previously had for this catering, we think it's 3 years, or it might be 5 years old. It can take time, but you've got to do it.
And I'm hoping that the summer, it might bring us some time for refreshing, restoration. So what have you been reading, watching, listening to? What's bringing you some inspiration at the moment?
I finished reading Ruth Jones's By Your Side, so it's not school business manager related at all. I really enjoyed it. It was an easy read, and actually at the moment my youngest son and his girlfriend are living with us, and she's got some other Ruth Jones books for me to read, so I think I might indulge in a bit of distraction and read something that's nice and easy, and I can hear Ruth's voice, but obviously with that sort of Gavin and Stacey slant to it, that Nessa slant, and it isn't Nessa as the character in this book, but I can almost visualize Ruth Jones, which I think is quite nice.
And is it a fiction? Is it memoir?
It's fiction,
Okay.
definitely fiction.
No.
Yeah.
Great. Emma.
Yes, me, I am actually, my husband said for the first time last night, I haven't seen you read for a long time. So that made me think, oh gosh, if he's noticed, then I better do something about it. But one thing I'm planning to do a lot more of in the summer is swimming. I've started. I'm really lucky to live near the water park, and there is a lake that I swim in, it's so lovely to be outside, even if it's cold. Like we went this morning, and it was actually quite choppy and cold when standing on the side, but when the water was like a bath getting in, and it just the feeling of well-being. So my advice to everybody over the summer is really focus on your own well-being, do things that make you really happy, and that makes me really happy, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'd think about reading as well.
Top up your joy levels, isn't it? Bring yourself some joy, whether that's swimming outside. That's never going to be topping up my joy level, just so everyone knows. And or reading a book in the shade, in a breeze, in this heat wave, that sort of thing.
Bring yourself some joy. I think that's a great plan. Big thanks to Helen Burge and Emma Gray for being with us and sharing some of their joy, experience and insights. If this episode has encouraged you to think about how you can create value in your role, give us a like or let us know in the comments. And be sure to subscribe for future episodes. Thank you for listening, and be back with you soon.